Well, a very good evening from my kitchen here in Phuket, and tonight we're going to be doing another recipe, and on this evening's menu is Tom Kha Gai, which is roughly translated as coconut chicken soup. In a moment I'm going to run through the ingredients that you need. Now you can make this as a chicken or prawn version, whichever you prefer. So the ingredients you're going to need to make this recipe are 2 chicken breasts. Of course you need to adjust the amount of the ingredients depending on the number of people that you're cooking for. We're cooking for 3 people and we find that this amount covers 3, no problem at all. So 2 chicken breasts. We have some oyster mushrooms. Again, the oyster mushrooms can be substituted if you can't get hold of oyster mushrooms. You can substitute them for another mushroom. It's not going to make a massive difference, but better if you can get hold of the oyster mushrooms. Then there's also, that's going to be using a couple of kaffir lime leaves, some lemongrass, spring onions, some tomatoes. Now I always ask Nat to put extra tomatoes in this recipe because I like both extra mushrooms and extra tomatoes in it. So we're going to be putting a couple of tomatoes, but again you can adjust it if you like or don't like tomatoes. Medium sized onion. There is a few, about, yeah, there's yeah, a few chilies there. I don't know exactly how many Nat is going to use. Are you going to use all of those?
Yeah, just make
yeah. Okay, so this is more for the look, to make it look nice rather than the spice. This is not a spicy dish. And the other thing that you're going to need is this. Now this is not ginger, which I thought it was to start with. It's actually called galangal, which is from the ginger family, but it's not the same as ginger. You should be able to get this from your supermarket. If you can't, then either a Chinese or Vietnamese grocery shop should sell it, and if they don't sell the fresh, they should sell the powdered version. But if you cannot get this ingredient, and it is quite an important ingredient in this dish actually, I've been reading up about it, and it says that you can't really substitute it. The closest you can get is if you buy young fresh ginger root. Use a small amount of that with 1/8 to 1/4 of lime juice and you get a similar flavour, but it's not going to be exactly the same. Then we've also got a couple of cloves of garlic and a few shallots. You're going to need roughly about 1 litre of coconut milk. Now over in Thailand we can get this fresh. Nat normally makes the milk herself, but she's bought this from the market today. Basically, when we've done the coconut milk before, if you've seen one of the videos, she makes it twice basically. So this is the first batch that she would make, and then this is the second batch of coconut milk. But you can substitute this just for the coconut milk either in the tins or the cartons, and you're going to need roughly 900 millilitres, so roughly a litre. You will also need 1 chicken stock cube, some salt, some chicken stock powder, and some tamarind paste, and that is all the ingredients. Now what I will do is I will go through the measurements as we're making the recipe. We've got 2 spoons here. I've finally got Nat to sort out the measurements. Now this spoon, the larger one out of the 2, is 1/2 tablespoon, that's the size of it, and the smaller one is 1 teaspoon. So that'll give you an idea of the measurements as we're going through the recipe. Now Nat's going to start to prepare the ingredients. So she's starting off with the shallots first. Crushing the garlic cloves. So basically she's crushed the shallots, but she hasn't chopped them. She's removing the skin off the garlic cloves, the outer shell. I think she's just going to crush those up, again not chopped. So these are just crushed with a knife. Now she's preparing the lemongrass. Okay. So as you can see, she's sort of battering the lemongrass with the blunt end of the knife, the handle of the knife. And this is basically to allow the flavour, release the flavour from the lemongrass, the shallots and of course the garlic, and that's why they're not being chopped. So Nat's using 3 stems of the lemongrass, but if they are quite large you can just use 2 because it is quite a strong flavour. Now she's preparing the galangal. You should be able to get this ingredient now in most of the supermarkets, wherever you are. Over here in Thailand, of course, it's readily available in the markets everywhere. It's very easy for us to get, but this is one of the most important ingredients from what I've been reading in this recipe, and it gives it the unique flavour and taste. So basically she's cut it in half and then she's peeling it. Are you going to slice that up, Nat? Yeah. Okay. How much will you use there? Just that. So we've got, I'm not quite sure how much we've got there. I'm going to get Nat to wait in a second. Ploy, can you get me the scales from over there, please? By the rice cooker, the scales. Yes, that's it. Okay, just 1 second, sweetheart. Let me just wait. And then we know how much we're using, because it is quite important. So we have 30 grams. 30 grams, okay. So 30 grams of galangal. We've got a medium-sized onion. You're going to be using all of that tonight?
Yes.
So all the onion. Yeah. Slice that up into reasonable slices. Not too thin, not too thick. As I've said, again, the vegetables, it's pretty flexible with the Thai cooking. One thing I like about it, you can sort of prepare the vegetables how you prefer, whichever way you prefer your vegetables sliced and cut up. You can do that. It's not going to make any difference to the flavour of the dish. A couple of the ingredients that I really like are tomatoes and the oyster mushrooms. So I always ask Nat to put in a little bit extra because I particularly like them. Nat's going to slice these down into sort of quarters. But again, if you're not so keen on tomatoes or the mushrooms, you can just ease back on the amount that you put in. So we've got 2 medium-sized tomatoes that are going in. Spring onions next. Just cut off the roots, peel off any of the outer leaves that aren't very good. And then I think she's just going to slice these down. Again, she's crushing it and then slicing it into about 3 to 4 centimetre lengths. You're going to need a dish, a bowl, the outside up. Kaffir lime leaves. Just going to be using about 3 or 4 there by the looks of it. We actually have these growing outside, so quite easy for us. We grow our own. But again, something you should be able to get hold of quite easily in the supermarket. Yeah, I don't mind a little bit. Now, this dish isn't normally spicy, so again, depends on if you like the dish spicy or not. If you do, then crush the chilies and that will release a bit more of the spice. If you don't like it spicy, then basically just put the chilies in whole, don't crush them down, and that will then just give you the colour, but it won't give you any spice. Ploy is going to also help Nat prepare basically the mushrooms. So all they're doing is tearing them apart really into some strips. But again, if you can't get oyster mushrooms, then you can substitute for different styles of mushrooms, whichever you prefer in the dish, and then cut them down to however you prefer them to be prepared. So we've got quite a few mushrooms. As I've mentioned, I do like mushrooms, so Nat always buys a few extra. So as you can see there, Ploy just tearing them apart and missing the bowl. So there's going to be roughly about a bowl full of mushrooms there. So again, it comes down to your own judgment really on how many you're feeding and also how much you like the ingredients. It's not going to make any difference to the taste of the dish by putting some extra or just taking a few out. Okay, now Nat's preparing the chicken breasts. We've got the ones with the skin on, so she's going to take the skin off. Now Nat does put the skin in the soup, but you can leave it out if you don't like the skin. She will prepare the skin and cook that in the soup as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can substitute the chicken and have prawn instead. You will find this dish on a lot of Thai menus, both chicken and the prawn version. Can you just show me how you're slicing that like you did last time? So again, not too thin, not too thick, just that's it. Okay. You don't want large chunks of chicken in there because of course you've got to make sure that it's cooked through. And as I mentioned on the last recipe, a lot of the time for Thai food is in the preparation. The actual cooking of the dishes is normally quite quick. So that's why Nat is cutting them fairly thinly, not really thin, but fairly thinly, so that the chicken will cook through quite quickly. Okay, and that's the chicken done. Oh, one more breast. So one more to go. So again, take the chicken skin off and then you can either cook it with the soup or discard it. Quite a straightforward dish to prepare, this one, and one that I particularly like. We eat this quite regular. Is that it? Everything prepared? Okay, that's all the ingredients prepared. We'll be back in a moment with the cooking procedure now of the dish. Okay, we're about to start the cooking of the dish. We've got two chefs in the kitchen again tonight. Head chef Nat and trainee chef Ploy. Ploy is going to start off the cooking. Go on then, get yourself sorted out then, Ploy. Let's get the cooking underway. So first of all, we're going to put in 550 millilitres of the coconut milk. Now if you haven't got the two like we have, we've got the first run and then the second run. If you've just got store-bought coconut milk, what Nat says is you can put the whole 900 millilitres in the pan and start to warm it up. You don't need to do the procedure where we put 550 millilitres first and then she will add some more coconut milk. Okay, and what's the next step? Okay, so now Ploy is going to add in galangal, shallots and also the lemongrass. We've got that on a medium heat. We're going to wait for the milk to warm up. So what we're doing now is infusing the coconut milk. So we've put the lemongrass, shallots, garlic, galangal all in the pan to warm through with the first lot of coconut milk. That's just now coming to a simmer. Now Ploy is going to add the chicken. You just want this on a rolling simmer, really, on a medium heat. Get it nice and warmed through. So we're going to cook the chicken through for about 5 minutes. Once you see it start to turn white and it's no longer pink. So now Ploy is adding the chicken stock cube. And we've got, hang on, so I'd say about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I am trying to work on that with the measurements because I've told her it's quite important for people to be able to reproduce these dishes to have the exact measurements. Now what Nat is adding is the tamarind paste. So she's putting 3 teaspoons of tamarind paste first. Now she's adding the tomatoes and onion. Give it a good mix up. Now she's going to add the second lot of coconut milk, just a little bit first. I think there's actually pieces of coconut in that milk as well, isn't there, Nat? Yeah.
Because today we buy and put in the freezer and make for cook.
Yeah. So again, then give it a few minutes to cook through. Come back to a simmer. Not quite simmering yet. Okay, so now Nat has put all the remainder of the coconut milk. But as I mentioned earlier, if you are using store-bought coconut in a tin or a carton, you can put the whole lot in at the start. It's not going to make any difference at all to the recipe. Okay, now Nat is going to add 1 teaspoon of chicken stock powder. This is slightly different to the stock cubes. What's she saying, Nat? Needs a bit more salt, does it? Don't go crazy with the salt. So Ploy's not happy with the taste. Nat is putting 1 more teaspoon. Oh, hang on. 2 teaspoons of tamarind paste. So now you've got, there's 5 teaspoons of tamarind paste that's gone in there, if I remember right, because you put 3 in to start with and then another 2. And now we've got a small amount of salt. As you can see, this is 1 teaspoon, this spoon, the actual size of it, because I've measured it, and there's just a little bit. So a couple of good pinches of salt. This is the only problem when we try to do the Thai recipes. The amounts, Nat's so used to just knowing what the amount that she needs, and she adjusts it to a taste, and it's quite difficult when you're doing that. Now Ploy is putting another teaspoon, just under a teaspoon of chicken. Yeah, I know that. I know it's not a full teaspoon. It's probably, well, a quarter of a teaspoon. You see, as I've said, it's quite important that now she's putting some more in. This is how they work here, and it's quite frustrating when you're trying to do a recipe because they know what it tastes like, but of course people that may be watching this video may have not ever tasted this dish before and they want to try it, and it's quite important to get the amounts right. Huh?
Let's check for it.
Okay, go on then, Ploy. You got your head back to the camera. Good or not? As I've said, Ploy says everything tastes good. So Nat's going to try it now. Not happy. A little bit more. Little bit more chicken stock. So that is now another sprinkle of chicken stock. So a quarter of a teaspoon again of chicken stock. And now we're adding the mushrooms. You need to give it a good mix round now before you taste it. You haven't mixed it round. Each time I do a recipe, I try to tell Nat how important it is that I need to know the measurements of the ingredients. Okay, let's give this a whirl now. Oh, yeah, very nice. Yeah, that's nice. Very nice. That's delicious. Do like this dish very much. And now Natty's going to put in the kaffir lime leaves and also the chilies. And also goes in the spring onions. And that is finished now. That dish is done. Camera closed down. Okay, that is the dish finished. Turn off the gas. So as you can see, it's not taken long. 10 minutes roughly. I think Natty's now warming up the curry that she cooked up earlier this morning. Okay, but that is the dish finished, and once we dish it out I will come back to you. And there you have the finished dish, Tom Kha Gai. And that is just going to lift it up a little bit so you can see that. Lovely looking dish, beautiful coconutty flavour with the chicken. As I mentioned, you can substitute the chicken, change that for prawn if you prefer. Well, that brings me to the end of tonight's recipe video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, until next time, you take care, and I will catch you on the next one.